Ready? All right. Time is now 6 o'clock and we'll begin the special session of school board meeting. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. In attendance tonight, we have Director Bill Dane, Director Peter, Director Carl Carey, and I am Director Tina Beach. I'd like to excuse Director Kincaid. She had a conflict tonight and won't be able to attend in person, but she's trying to get on Zoom, but is having some problems with her phone. So I think she will be here attending, but if not, she asked that we please excuse that she wouldn't be here tonight. All right, so we'll turn the time straight over to Dr. Middleton for.
Okay. So just as a way of a welcome, just had a few comments I wanted to share. And first of all, thanks for spending about 90 minutes with us tonight. Certainly May and June are the busiest times of the year with all the events, and they're great celebrations. So to add one more on top of the work that's going on with BLRB, it's a pretty dense couple of months. So thank you. I do want to set the stage for this evening's meeting by providing a little bit of context. And the first is just to acknowledge that it is Teacher Appreciation Week, or I don't know if it's a month now, but it is. We do celebrate our teachers in May every year. And for me, I have three people that were pretty pivotal in my life and my education to get me to this point. And certainly my parents were two of them. And despite, somewhat of a dysfunctional family, the two things they always emphasized was reading and college. And I use the word emphasize sort of loosely because with a Marine Colonel father, emphasize has a whole lot of different meaning there. Or encouragement there. And then the other person is Lucy Martin, who 50 years ago was known as Miss Penny Bianco and was my fourth grade teacher at that time. And that's hard to believe that was 50 years ago, but she really made the difference of me being successful in academics or not, because I was the one who was Christmas treeing all of the assessments, making great designs, not really making a connection. And I know part of it was probably maturity or immaturity, but before interventions and differentiated instruction was even a thing, she was doing that. And so I always go back. I'm just so thankful for her for helping turn around my academic career. Teaching has never been easy, but I don't know if it's ever been harder than what it is right now. It might be its most difficult. And you read it and see it, teachers and administrators are leaving the profession in droves. And I think now more than ever, we really need to listen to our teachers and administrators and our staff as to what what their needs are, because it is such a difficult time right now. But for tonight and during Teacher Appreciation, just a big thank you to our teachers and encourage them to keep fighting the good fight. The second point I want to make, this team met with principals and GFEA yesterday in separate meetings to share the same information that we're going to share tonight. And the overarching question that we pose to this group, and certainly I challenge the cabinet with, is how do we provide a high quality education for all students during a high inflationary period, while being mindful of being good stewards with our resources and keeping our staff whole. And what we shared with the two groups was everyone and every department will be impacted. The district office will see changes, schools will be changes, departments will, well, everyone is going to have to do the same or more with less. But there is one thing I do want to sort of put to rest tonight. I think we might want to collectively, but I'll speak for myself. And that is, we have people in our buildings. We have principals, we have paras, we have teachers that get glimpses, they catch things here and there, and things get out of context. And so under this impression that, you know, this board and me, we don't want to provide necessary services. And certainly there's nothing further from the truth. There's an impression services are going to be halted, all for the sake of 5%. And the cabinet has attempted to address this directly with staff members, but I just want to go on the record, and I'm sure you as well tonight, that, you know, we are not talking about cutting any of the necessary, appropriate, legally bound services that are required. Yes, we need to be good stewards of our finances. And yes, we are having a program review done to be more efficient, to be more effective, to learn from outside consultants. But, you know, never ever have I uttered or you uttered the words of not providing services. That is, you know, that's the furthest thing that we're here for. We are here to provide what is necessary for our students, and that are deemed appropriate, necessary. And yes, that includes special education, but it includes all of our programs. So with that context, I just wanted to sort of put that to rest, that we are here for students. We are here for student learning while dealing with very difficult financial decisions. And again, that overarching necessity of being good stewards. And so with that in mind, I'll turn it over to our next in our agenda on which we had on special education updates. And so I think, Beth, did you want to?
Can I just add one thing to it, just to kind of kudo on you? I think if I had to give a theme for what I'm hoping that we can do here, actually is the opposite, I think, of the context that you talked about. What I'm hoping to do here is to leverage our dollars in a better way to improve students' outcomes, right? And there's certainly ways that you can do that. So it's to sharpen the knife rather than to cut out necessary things or stuff like that. So that's really what I'm looking for, is ideas to leverage those dollars so that we can do more for the students we serve. Yeah.
Agreed.
So I was asked to provide some data about special education referrals for the 22-23 school year. And this information was shared in the executive materials due to the student numbers and the fact that it's a lot of personally identifiable information when you're looking at data that's sort of sliced and diced this way and looked at in some cases individually. So I don't know if anybody's had a chance to look at that. It was just uploaded this afternoon.
Can we, if you could pass those around?
Yeah. And so I'll just speak to them in generalities as opposed to calling out certain numbers.
One more.
Also just to put it out there, if you were to try and crunch all the numbers to make some of these make sense, just know that there might be a couple of discrepancies because there are some things that are in process. So we have a number of open referrals currently that our teams are considering whether to evaluate or not. We received or we did 118 referrals so far this year. we have those broken down by developmental preschool, the early childhood education and assistance program, Mountain Way Elementary, Monte Cristo Elementary, Granite Falls Middle School, Granite Falls High School, Crossroads, and Open Doors. And we've got the referrals, and then we do have 25 days to decide whether or not to evaluate. So you can see the majority of those we did move on to evaluation, but not all. There were some students this year who, through the evaluation process, were found ineligible or did exit special education. And then you can see that to date, there have been 87 completed initial evaluations. A very small number were found ineligible. So most of the students were found eligible for special education. We broke them down by grade, and since we have 2 high schools, we broke out, if it doesn't say it's the high school, if it says CR, that's Crossroads, if it says OD, that's Open Doors. And then P2, P3, and P4, that's all of our developmental preschool as well as the CAP program. And then we broke it down by eligibility category. So you can sort of see the themes there that I would just point out is there's a lot of speech-only students, a lot of students who are identified as developmental delays, and then surprising number of kindergarten students, and actually a surprising number of high school students. And as Dr. Middleton referenced, we will be having a special education review. Folks from WASU will be visiting us on Monday, 8th.
Board, any questions?
I'll jump in real quick. Dr. M, could you, that review, obviously I haven't seen kind of the depth of the breadth of what they're going to do, but can you talk about kind of things that they're going to look at, and do you have any like input on some of the feedback that they're going to give, like from other buildings or school districts when they've reviewed, like an example of, hey, here's how we're going to present information to the board? And I guess 3 questions. What are they going to do? What is what they're going to do look like? And then what do you see the road ahead after they give us whatever feedback they have?
Right, so they arrive on Sunday and they'll be meeting with me and members of cabinet that evening. We want to talk about the concerns that we've talked about in this room and that I've had in other settings, and just sort of the context of here we are, a district of 22%. Here's what we've been doing. This is what we're putting in place now with new procedures. We want to talk about finance because they are bringing an operations person as well on this team, and just sort of set that stage. On Monday, they'll be interviewing 9 different, I'm sorry, no, they'll be interviewing, I think, 12 different people throughout the day. And there'll be someone from every building that they speak with. And again, for them to get a sense of how we do things. Really, a lot of the questions that we have, we want them to dig into. When we meet on Sunday, we certainly want to guide them as to, what the situation is, what our scenarios are, and then for them to, like I said, jump in and discover how special education, as well as general education interventions, are in our schools. At the end of the day, we'll be meeting with them as sort of an exit interview. It doesn't mean that they're done visiting. They might visit with others as follow-up via Zoom, but in terms of on-site, that's it. They will be writing up a report, and they're happy to come and visit with the board in the future to talk about what recommendations they would have for us.
Got it. So at a board meeting or something, they'll be on the agenda.
Correct, yes.
Got it. Any idea on the timeline, like from beginning to end or anything like that?
I don't, it's not months and months. I think they would have a report in a matter of weeks.
Got it.
So, and then even, I mean, I could see them coming and visiting in June with us.
That's all I had on that piece.
This, so it looks like 118 completed referrals, 87 completed evaluations. So there's 31 evaluations that need to, or were the 31 that,
Yeah, like I said, if you were to actually do the math, it wouldn't completely take into account all of it. We didn't have time to necessarily track all of that, but you could see that for sure we did not evaluate every student that was referred, even though we did the majority.
Okay.
And we broke that down by school. And then there are some open referrals and some that are in process.
okay, and I guess my curiosity is just because I know that was some of the public discourse, public discussion was the time that it takes. Are those families aware of timelines, I'm assuming, and they'll be okay? That's it.
You have any questions? No? I think I just have a comment because I didn't spend a ton of time looking at it. I guess I'm surprised that I thought I would see more emotional, behavioral disability issues than is on here. Looks like there are 4. And that surprises me because what I hear, is that we have big behaviors and big issues. But I see a lot more that are, I guess maybe it just qualifies differently, developmental delays versus behavior issues. So can you help me understand like what the difference is between those? Because what I'm hearing is big behaviors are the reason that we have problems.
Yeah, the main thing around emotional behavioral disability, which is why it's rare, or it should be rare to see that in the very young students. For example, when you see all of the preschool and K-2 students that were eligible under developmental delays, is that there are 5 parts of emotional behavioral disability. And I'm looking at my former school psychologist sitting next to me. And one of them is over a prolonged period of time. That's not the exact wording, but you're expected to see that over a period of time because sometimes it is developmental. And by 3rd grade, a student has kind of quote unquote grown out of that behavior. And so that's why the definition and the eligibility, which is in our WACs in terms of how to be found eligible, is there so that students are not necessarily given that label soon. I don't know if you want to have something to add to that.
The other thing is, if you look under health impaired numbers.
Yeah.
So there are lots of emotional behavioral disability is a pretty big label to put on a kid. So I know when I'm in an evaluation meeting and it's initial, and there's a medical diagnosis that we have.
Mhm.
I encourage parents to really look at health impaired because emotional behavioral disability, when they become adults, like if a person, for example, is going in the military, it would disqualify him.
Right.
So
Gotcha.
that's another,
Okay.
it's a big label.
There's another question that I thought of when you were talking, and now it just went away from me. Oh, I remember. So it says here, I'm jumping ahead to Marshall's presentation, which I did look at ahead of time. And so I see that there are 24 speech language impairments that are new. And Marshall talks to us about hiring speech language
I think that's,
people. What is a caseload? Like is 24, how many people is that? Like how many people do you hire in number 24?
That's about half of an SAP.
Okay. And that's just one SLP, or do you have to hire the assistant as well?
What our contract language says is that an SLP caseload is 50, and that for every 6 hours of SLPA, that's an additional 25 students that can be served.
Okay. All right. Board, any other questions?
I have just a follow-up question based on what I was just hearing, so what I'm hearing, Bridget, is that you're saying that emotional behavioral disability is a big label to put on a kid, and so we don't want to, while that may be one of the pieces, they're potentially likely classified as something else because we're kind of waiting to see as they mature, like, what happens with that and stuff like that. Is that a decent summary of it, essentially?
I think for the younger kids, but if you look at like the numbers at Crossroads and the number of health impaired
Yeah,
students, those are all behavior. Those are students that were referred because of behaviors. But they, like we have students who are schizophrenic, we have students who are like, have different labels that you could really go either way.
right.
And so I don't think, so the health impaired older students assume that we're dealing with behavior goals in an IEP.
Got it. So I guess, I just as you were talking, I was like, I pulled up the breakdown that you gave us last time about paras, and obviously the greatest amount of paras that we have is behavioral. But obviously that's one of the smallest categories that we have. So are those behavioral paras are working with kids that are identified for SPED, but behavior isn't necessarily one of the things that they're classified with, is that?
Right, they could have, their eligibility category could be developmental delays, it could be autism, it could be health impairments, it could be
Got it. But and part of this might be just my ignorance of how this works, but we've identified, well, based upon big actions or stuff like that, we need a behavior para because that's the thing that's either endangering them or someone else or something along those lines. Got it. Okay. So there's certainly not a one-to-one ratio of identified emotional behavioral disability and behavioral para. That's not a one-to-one. Got it.
Maybe just from my investigating of this. Also, if a student was on an IEP when they're in preschool, because of the way the classes work in preschool, there's smaller class sizes, there's some extra adults in the classroom, they may not have needed a one-on-one in that arena. But when they get to the kindergarten, they're in the kind of this big classroom now with a lot more kids, one adult. That may transition to needing a one-on-one. Is that correct?
it depends on at least a few occasions.
Yeah. So they may already have been on an IEP, but then there might be a reevaluation that happens. And that this list, I think, is just initial evaluation stuff.
Got it. Okay.
Except for the ones that were exited because that we were requested that information.
Right. Any other questions? Thank you. And next is, let's see, HR. Jennifer. Oh,
Okay, so I emailed out earlier the presentation we did in January and added some more detailed information, and Tina gave some questions on what we're doing to get the harder to fill positions or, chasing them down. It's really right now hitting everywhere we can. And
Yeah, I'm trying to get it
up there
for you. Sorry. It's like a shared history.
okay, so in January, we talked about places we were going, what we were doing, so general high level. A lot of the marketing, we hit the big job boards, Indeed, diversity and education. Handshake is a platform that allows you to post a job and then select the universities you'd like to advertise at. They have the opportunity to reject it or accept it. Most of the places that I target usually accept the ad. And then specialized field associations, which I have a slide later. Kind of small, but basically when we advertise an opening in the district, our bargaining agreements say, it has to be in-house for 5 business days. So once that's done, they get pushed out to K-12 Job Spot, which is part of our frontline recruit and hire, which is a large national school job posting site. But advertising isn't kind of one size fits all. You have to look at especially places for whether it's a principal, a school psych, occupational therapist, or band, music, nurses, or art. They just kind of hit those specific sites where, you know, newly graduated teachers might be looking, or SLPAs, SLPs might be looking for work. There isn't like a formula to say this is going to work for sure. It's just pushing it out there as far as you can, and hopefully somebody sees your application over all the other school district applications out there. I know that we were successful in that Beth and Jackie Trevine, who was our school psych, attended the Washington School Psych Association Job Fair, and we hired a woman from there. So it works. It's just getting out there and getting it done, and it is time consuming. When we went to Tacoma, it was 6 in the morning and home late in the afternoon. Right now, since we're not hiring, it makes it challenging to talk to candidates and say, well, we might have jobs. We have these specialty areas. So it's just hitting depending on what the specialty is. Then difficult positions to fill. School psychs, it's high turnover and very competitive. Graduates are going back into the private sector because it's more pay. And speaking of high turnover, one of the psychs we hired last year resigned today. So it's just, you know, it's hard to stay on top of it. We hired an SLP, I think it was January of 2022, and she resigned by the end of June and moved back to Oregon. So it's, I don't know how we retain people. We can't give retention bonuses as far as I know, but I know with school nurses, I think the requirement to be vaccinated and then overworked during the pandemic, it's just got a lot of people burned out. And school nurses are paid better at hospitals and clinics. When you look at our pays, you know, over 10 months, then spread it over 12, it's significantly less than a hospital or a clinic that pay a nurse. Pathologists, occupational therapists, they're very specialized fields. They're growing, but again, those folks have a lot of options. Then I went over recruiting challenges before. I think kind of new ways to try to get ourselves in front of other districts is go to universities. You can go and schedule time to meet with candidates if they accept your invitation to meet with them. Like at Western, they do that. Go and just talk to people and try and, you know, explain who we are at Granite, what we offer.
Is that something you have scheduled right now?
No, generally most of the career fairs are in the late winter, early spring, and then they'll be around in the fall. Because graduations in like at Western is March for a lot of teachers, they exit the program by early March or December, early December. So they'll have one in November. So it's really university level, just still having jobs posted there. So people are looking ahead of time. You know, if they know they're going to graduate in the fall, they can apply and you would hire somebody, or, you know, if we could get somebody, it's worth it to hire them early.
So did I understand what you were saying? I thought I heard you say that you would go and talk to them if they would talk to you, like you would go and do an interview with them.
Career centers there that you'll be on site, and then they kind of advertise that you'll be there. You can set up interview times and they sign up for times to come visit with you about our meetings.
Do we do that, or do we
I
do
have
that
not
via
done it
Zoom?
before,
Oh,
but it's something that we can try.
so we are not hiring right now, or we are? Do we have any open positions at all?
I think we interviewed an SLP today. yesterday.
Yesterday or the day before?
Yes, so yes, we are trying to fill an SLP opening and then we'll have a school psych opening.
Because I pulled up Indeed because I saw it in the packet from when I looked at the packet earlier, but there are Granite Falls School District openings, but they're all contracts. There's no listing here for any direct hire for Granite Falls School District. And so I'm trying to understand, are
I know
these
some expired.
listing like stale and we're not actually hiring for these for occupational therapist or full-time speech language pathologist assistant or school psychologist part-time? It says that it's here. It says it's for Granite Falls from recruiters, but I don't see our like direct hire here. But I don't use Indeed very often. I'm just
I know
went here
some
because you
expired
paid.
recently and I just gotta get them back out there.
I have a lot of thoughts on this.
Me too. Go ahead.
The actual issue here is, I mean, maybe there could be enhancements in recruiting or whatever, but I mean, the fact of the matter is we are not competitive with our union contracts. Just plain and simple, right? And I know that because I keep using nurses as an example. We have nurses. We're just paying them a hell of a lot more through contracts than through a union, through individual contract work instead of through PSE or GFEA. So the people are out there to take the jobs. There's some line in between what we're offering through PSE or GFEA and what they're taking through contract stuff. And so the issue here is we can't tell the future in our current progress or processes. We go into bargaining and we try to predict the future. And then we end up falling flat and then we end up having to pay everybody way over on contract. So what we need, and this is my outrageous ask, is we need to reopen bargaining and we need to find some way, somehow talk to whatever lawyers we need to talk to, anything, but there needs to be a clause that enables the negotiation of job codes intra-year. There has to be the ability for us to say, I will get over the fact that every single person in a job code has to be paid the same. So then we don't negotiate with the individual, we negotiate with the union on a job code. If intra-year we can say, I'm going to make up numbers here. If a nurse is currently making $35 an hour, and that's what we're listed at, and we're deficient in 2, and we have $95 contract out per hour with these other nurses, then we offer 45 or 50 or whatever that it is to hire, and we reserve the right to go back and pay the existing nurse that pay, right? Or whatever job role it is. But that clause, I'm not a lawyer, but I feel like having that clause in that should allow us the ability to work agilely, not on a year or per 3-year basis. Because this is just insane how we're going from, like, we are paying one nurse 3 nurses pay, and we're paying 3 nurses pay. So we're paying for 9 nurses when we have 5, right? So this is just, or we're paying 11 nurses when we have 5, paying 11 nurses worth of salary when we have 5 nurses. And so this is just completely unacceptable. And every time that I have a contact with the union, it's, oh, well, there needs to be a bunch of approvals by the school. And then with the school, it's like, well, the union doesn't want to pay more. It's like, we just need to, I hate to use the term rip it up, but we need to at least open it back up and have that clause just included. Maybe there's some things I'm missing, some finer points, but it has to change because we just keep banging our head against the wall of, Jennifer's sitting here and continually bringing a lump of coal to all these places, right? Hey, do you want $35? No. Hey, do you want $35? No. Do you want $35? No. Cool. I'm going to go to more places and offer the same crappy compensation package, and nobody's accepting it. I wonder why, right? So we have to just open this up to just be like, hey, we're willing to pay more now. And I know people will say, well, aren't we in a budget cut? Yes, but I'm willing to pay more so that we can cut the extreme contracts that we have. So that's my high level thought. Whatever that's possible, I feel like it should be completely possible, but that's my outrageous ask. So whatever I need to do to get that moving, support you, Dr. Middleton, or whoever, right? So.
I think that would be something we'd have to discuss, like contract time, GFEA and stuff like that, but
Well, and that's my question is, why can't we just go to them and say like, we want to reopen bargaining?
I don't know.
So that's what I feel like we should push and just say like, why, like, I would want to ask like, why aren't we doing that? And if we don't have some wildly good answer as to why we're not doing it, then we should do it.
Yeah. I guess I'm coming at this a little bit, and this isn't to minimize your statement, because I definitely think that there's some definite positive out in that. I guess the way that I'm coming at this is that I guess the reality that, we will never, and I will emphasize never, and if there's anyone that's in the know of this, I guess it's me, we will never be competitive to larger districts. Like, I just don't see a funding model that's ever going to do that. So if we're resting our laurels on making people, right, keeping them here because we pay more than they can make anywhere else, we're always going to lose that equation. Let me go back. I shouldn't say never. I can't anticipate a future where I could see that, I guess I should say. So this isn't necessarily a Granite Falls problem. This isn't a public institution problem. I mean, private industries, I deal with this too, right? I don't pay as much as other consulting firms pay, but I've always held that people, they care most about what they get paid when they begin working for you. And then they care about the environment, the people that they work with, their life work balance, all of those other things. And I think that there is ways that we can positively influence that, to show people that they're valued, and, all of the kind of intangibles to, tie them to what we are and who we are. That means more, I think, at the end of the day, because I contend that people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses and they leave work environments at least 60% of the time. Certainly there's exceptions to that. So I guess, and I've said this before, I think that we're well served to kind of pick our lane, like who we are and what we want to be, because I've talked to other smaller districts, especially like on the east side and stuff like that, and they vision themselves as essentially like an incubator, like a new teacher incubator, right? They take a new teacher or someone new, they get them for a year or two, and they know that they're going to spread them to the world, right? And they get lean and mean, they get really good at mentoring, coaching, helping those teachers be as successful as they can, or staff be as successful as they can in the time that they got. And then they've got this they recruit, right? They're always doing that. That's the lane that they're at, because they just know that that's the world that they live in. Right. And then there's other districts, still smaller districts about our size, that are more remote, right? That know that they are going to be able to hold on people, because who wants to drive 2 hours to the nearest town or something like that? So they lean into loving their staff and keeping them built into the environment and stuff like that. And so I think that we're missing an R in this, is kind of the retainment plan, right? How are we going to retain people? Or if not retain, how are we going to get really good at kind of that cycle that we know that we're going to be in, because we know that we aren't going to be financially able to compensate them as much as another district would be. So if you guys think I'm way off, that's completely fine. But, I liken myself as someone that, at least with my management style, so people are going to love the place they work, and they're going to love the people that they work with. And that's what's going to hold them to me. And so I don't have to be so worried about paying them 10 cents more than they can get another consulting firm. So I'm certainly willing for you guys to tell me I'm wrong, but that's my thoughts.
Well, and so the sweeping statement, it's easy to take the 30,000 foot view and say, yeah, of course, when we're at what are traditionally the bargaining discussions, yeah, we're not going to be able to match whatever the acronym is, TCP, PCE, whatever it is, +5, or whatever Lake Stevens or Mukilteo or whoever's doing. But right now we're paying $340 an hour for nurses. Why can't that be $250? And why can't we, like, it's not to say like we're competing against ourselves, right? And so that's where my idea of opening up that individual, because it's not saying that we're trying to be, we're not trying to compete against Lake Stevens with every single position everywhere, but there are niche places, you know, nurse is the use case, and I'm sure there are probably other ones where we're paying more than we need to, right? Like we shouldn't, and so that needs to be fixed. The other thing of, you know, the concept of, I know these are just large concepts in general for a district, but of, you know, we know that we're kind of like a feeder school, like a AAA going through. My fear there is the risk of, okay, well, who are the coaches and are you compensating them well enough? And now the risk at the bottleneck is way more intense because you have 5% of people that are growing all these people. What happens if, you know, 10% of those 5% leave? Now all of a sudden the whole thing falls apart, right? And that's my fear in a system like that. And so it's how are we enabling, yes, retention, bringing people in the best that we can. But when I look at this, like if I had a bill in my home that, you know, right, if I'm spending, you know, $340 on 5 different services and somebody comes to me and be like, I can give you all 5 of those services for $250, no brainer, I'm going with the $250, right? And so that's where I look here and I just say, it's not necessarily that we have to compare ourselves to other districts. It's just even just within our walls, we're paying people way more than is necessary, is effectively where it is. And that's where I would push, I'd shake the trees, I'd do all the little verbiage that we've said in the past of just like, why can't we? And, you know, everybody look up and see, why can't we reopen bargaining? Why can't we just sit down and have those discussions and try to figure out, and maybe we leave after that and we go, well, we're still where we were, but at least we tried, right?
I mean, I guess and you're absolutely right. I guess the and statement I would make is though, in times of adversity, I lean on the things that I can control to minimize the things I can't control. We could make the grandest argument to your point, and I don't disagree with it, but what if we make this grandiose argument and the union and the PSC goes, or union goes, GFEA goes, no, I don't want that. Right? We can't control that. We can't force them to do that. There is no lever, no mechanism to force that into the contract.
Correct, but at least within the discussions, then we can seek understanding. Why no? Why wouldn't this work out? What would make it work?
Yeah.
Like, how can we reach this common ground? Because they don't have employees now and we're overpaying. We're both losing, right? They're not getting their employees in the door and we're overpaying. So it's like, to me right now, it's a lose-lose.
Right.
And so we should sit there and if they say no, then we say, okay, so how do you resolve your problem? Right? Obviously, like I said, we're walking with a lump of coal to these places. They aren't accepting this pay. What's your resolution? And now let's take our suggestion, your suggestion, and meet somewhere in the middle. I don't know.
So let's just go one step further. Let's say the answer is because I don't want to. And I'm not saying that would be their answer, but I mean but there's been other things we probably, I don't want to. Yeah, I don't like that. And so keep winding it down for me. So what do we do at that point?
Yeah.
And the answer is no, I'm sorry, I don't want that.
Yeah. What's the logic? What's the reasoning behind I don't want to?
There's no mechanism to force them to give us the logic.
That's not a reason to not go forward with it.
No, I agreed. We could try, but at the end of that road, if the answer is no, sorry, what do we do then?
Right.
What's option B?
Right. I know, but if you're just saying, no, I don't want to, that's a petulant child at this point. That's not, no. So that's where I would strive to, because that person should not be in leadership at any rank.
Right.
If they're saying, I don't want to, I'm stomping my feet and I'm saying, I don't want to, there has to be a reason that we can go back and forth and we can say that, you know, that we can go. And this is where I think it's digging deeper and it's grinding through that. If it's going to fall into that type of disagreement, which is unfathomable to me, but I mean, I haven't been part of the bargaining agreements, I guess, but yes, if somebody is saying, I don't want to, why don't you want to? Because I don't want to. Let's uncover that a little bit more. What are the reasons why you do not want to?
Right.
And if you're telling me that there is going to be somebody on the other side that just keeps saying, because I don't want to, because I don't want to, because I don't want to, that's a completely ridiculous thought process.
Yeah, so I guess but just to talk that through it, I certainly don't want to belabor the point. Let's just say that that's the outcome. What is your B option to solve the issues that we have to this specific issue, if we just get to an impasse and there, for whatever reason, you can't get past it? What's B? Because and I'm not saying that it will or won't get there, but I guess that to me then goes to that point of, I don't have a mechanism to force you to do something. And if you refuse to do something, then I stop.
I come from a Institute of Escalations. We have chapter presidents for unions that are here. Somebody has to answer as to why a chapter president would not be open to advocating for their employees to have more money. So somebody has to be above who is sitting in this building.
Can I suggest a B?
Mhm.
Or do you have a B in mind?
I mean,
I want.
what I talked about is kind of my B,
Okay,
because those are things that we can control, but yeah, go ahead.
so I'm thinking about the 2 points you're making, and I think they're both good points. I think they're valid perspectives. But then I think about who we have working for us right now, who we hired, and then they chose to leave, turn in their resignation today. I'm curious what the reasons, when people leave, are we asking them? Are we doing exit interviews on that to gather information? And based on that information, how are we pivoting? So to Peter's point, we have a $35 an hour lump of coal. Okay, except that for some people, they're willing to work for that price that is currently negotiated, that we can currently offer. They're willing to work for it because there are some that do. So we know that given the right set of circumstances, maybe it's their kids are in our district, or, I don't know, something like that. Maybe they just love Granite Falls and they don't want to drive too far, whatever their reasons are. We have positions today, it sounds like, that need to be filled, but we can't keep doing the same things we've done and expect a different outcome. So the things that are up here tell me what we've done in the past. And they tell me all the reasons it didn't work. But as the director of HR, I want to know your vision for the future. What are you going to do differently? Because what you've done has got us to where we are. And to Peter's point, we're paying however much you figured out, 50, yeah, an hour or whatever. So we have to hire. If that means we go talk to them before they graduate, we don't go in March, we go in February. I mean, what are we going to do different? Like, I need the vision from you. What is going to be different? Because 5 slides of everything that doesn't work is being a newspaper reporter. You're telling me what happened in the past. What's the vision of what we're going to do differently to solve this problem? Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but we got to try something, because what we're doing leaves us with open positions, expired listings. I can't find us in the places that we say we're hiring. Right now, I can't find us. I just searched. So we got to do something differently. So help me understand the vision of where it's going.
Well, that's why we have to put more effort into recruiting. I mean,
So we ask, so the schools give us their action steps, they give us their goals, they give us their action steps. And, I mean, you guys have heard the same thing from me, like as the directors of different, as the cabinet, as the director of HR, Beth has heard me say the same thing as the director of special education. What's your vision? We know where we are. What are we doing differently to be better? What are we trying differently? And that's really my question. That was kind of my question coming in, because I read through everything, and I did read through it later. So I'm like, I need to see your vision of what we're doing different. And that is how we get some people who will take $35 when we can discuss it differently with the union, but we can't hold where we are until we take a long-term resolution, right? Like, what are we going to do tomorrow morning differently? Like, what's the vision? Where are we going? What are we going to try? That's my thought. Anyway, I know you have more. I can see it on your face.
No, I think you make a very valid point. I certainly think to your point, right, what Director Ledoux is talking about is different, right? Is something potentially different. Obviously, that only comes up, I mean, I guess you could technically maybe try to do a memorandum of an MOU or, I mean, that actually,
Right. Reopening is,
that would be, that's problematic. It's problematic.
I'm willing to sit down and visit, but
Yeah, I'd love to hear your.
can't take, I mean, I don't want to discount this conversation, but as you drive across the country, you'll see in every town a big banner that says, "We need bus drivers." And they might as well put, "We need school nurses." Now, to your point, you're right. We're not, that wage isn't competitive when it comes to nurses. So yeah, we can try something there, try something differently, but every sector is, well, not every sector, but a lot of sectors in education, they're struggling to fill these. And this isn't just a Granite Falls issue. But yes, we'll continue to refine and look at new ways of reaching out.
I wanted to ask a question.
Did you have any further?
I did, sorry.
Yes.
My daughter was texting. So I guess I don't want to, if there was a lot of good conversation here, that I guess I don't want to lose in the grand scheme of things. I know this is a special session, but I guess how do we summarize or not necessarily lose this? Because I definitely think, I think the solution, probably just trying to think up with everything that's said is something that will certainly positively influence is maybe a little bit of something that we've all said, right? Try stuff different. Maybe try to negotiate contract language. Let's work on our retainage plan and stuff like that. So I guess I'm asking you, Dr. Middleton, how do we, or I guess, what do you think the next step is? Not being an educational professional or no, what do you think the next step is so that we can, I don't know, maybe try to do some of these things or something like that? I'm not necessarily, our job is the what, your job is the how. So I also want to give you the flexibility to lead in the fantastic way that you do. I guess, where do we go to from here? I know it's a tough question. Sorry.
No, it's not. I mean, Director Ledoux and I have had this conversation a couple of times. And so it is a matter of just sitting down with PSE and saying exactly what we've been talking about. And I thought he put it in a good way of, okay, do we still want all these dollars to go out? You don't have members. You could have members. How do we get to that point? And you're right. Saying we're going to reopen the contract is tricky. Saying, can we talk specifically about this one line item that needs to be really the only entry point there. And so, and we can have that conversation. In fact, we meet monthly and we meet with them, I think next Monday or Tuesday, and that would could be added to the agenda. The other pieces of, to me, 2 years ago, we had all telepsychs. And it's because of Jennifer and Beth going out and really recruiting. We now have 3 people through 2.5 who want to be here and have said, I want to stay in Granite Falls, so what we want to. And so I think they have done some different things. They have been more aggressive in going out and going to those places. You and I talked a couple of years ago about how do we reach out to diverse candidates. And so again, Jennifer has been very good about going to those associations and saying, let's advertise in different places. So I don't think it's doing the same old thing, which maybe in the past have been put it on our website and that's it. So I think we continue and it is a matter of being aggressive though, for sure.
Yeah.
So.
And to Director Beach's point, which I heard clearly was, what different are we going to do? What were the results that we got? If they're undesirable, what different we're going to do? And that's the how that I don't necessarily want to I'm not minimizing your point, Director Beach. I'm just saying you don't necessarily have to tell me the how. I guess I just want to feel comfortable that what we've talked about, like, got it, moving forward kind of thing. And I know that's what you would do anyway. I guess I just didn't want anyone to feel like they've given feedback and it's just kind of like stopped here at this meeting and stuff. So
I think the 6 of us have got it.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, the main thing that I look at right now is assuming the $35 figure is correct. We budgeted $364,000 for nurses. We're paying $707,000. Like that's one position and that deserves shaking trees. So.
Right, any other questions? Bill, did you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but just to go over, because that was a lot, but just a little bit of where I see our school district and being new to the board. What I do see is Carl talked about us being more of an apprenticeship area, and I work. I think everybody knows here at the fire district, and we're in the same situation. Right? We can't pay what South County, Snohomish County pays or anything else. So we do a heavy recruiting, but we also realize as an agency that we are an apprenticeship program. We bring in and recruit the newest graduates, the people who want to get into this in long term, and they want to come and be a part of a growing agency. And I think recognizing that and putting that out there is important. And I think it sounds like Jennifer's doing a good job of going in and hitting folks coming right out of school, getting them in here. And I think it's a benefit to our students as well to have these newer, more curious, adventurous teachers coming in and helping develop our program and in developing themselves so that they're marketable later. Going in and realizing that's important. As far as union contracts, I was involved with the union for a long time. And one of the things that I think is risky is bringing up the idea of opening a contract, because you're not only opening it for nurses, because once you open the contract, you open all levels of the contract. There's nothing off limits then. And it becomes really a sticky situation, especially when we're working with a negative balance. We're needing to tighten the belt. And if we open up a union contract, it would be dangerous. But selectively negotiating where we see that we can make inroads, most of the time, union leadership would be open to that. And then we could do MOUs for different positions if that was a way that the local would want to go. But again, that it's tricky. This is it's a lot. And the concern about what we're paying the nurses, that's huge. And that's one area. And there are also other areas where we can do better.
Yeah.
But overall, I think, just having this meeting and saying that we are working to manage our situation, and the team is putting in an effort to do it.
Yeah. Well, and the one thing that I want to make clear too is none of this is black and white. I understand opening a contract is risky, but also we are sitting here having this discussion because our status quo is even riskier. Right? We wouldn't be having these financial discussions if we didn't need, so like, there's going to be risk somewhere. Where is there the most risk? In my eyes, I mean, people with more education on this stuff, more experience, tell me that it's riskier to reopen this contract and to continue bleeding money. And I'll shut up, right? But if that's an unknown thing, and we're not doing it because it's just an unknown risk, like let's try to quantify that risk. Like, once again, if it's just that, and if you have an answer for it, let me, or if you don't have an answer for it, you can always come back. But if we reopened it, what is the ultimate largest risk in there? And is there never mind, we'll just close it back up? Like, is the risk that we can just be like, oh, never mind, we couldn't come to agreement on anything. The agreement still is as it stands. Is that the worst case
I
scenario?
guess if it opened up and we had no agreement, a risk could be a work stoppage. I think right now, we have, I think in education, probably in every industry in the state of Washington, everybody feels like they are underpaid right now because inflation has been so crazy. And unfortunately, the state chose to not put a large amount of money into education this last budget. So the risk is, the nursing group is a pretty small group.
Right.
There are much bigger groups in our district that may carry a little more weight. And being frank, I think the risk would be that trying to raise one group, one small representation of a group up significantly, the other groups would expect the same. And I think if we couldn't do that, we wouldn't have a contract existing now. So a work stoppage would be an option.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I use nursing as an example. That's because those are the numbers that people have, relayed to me and what I've talked about. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if we dive deeper and there's plenty of units that are facing the exact same issues. So that's more of where I'm coming from, is just, if it is in fact too risky to open and it's actually been studied and addressed and we've evaluated, right? But like I said, we're having these conversations because the current state of our district is a huge risk, right? Carl, you've mentioned the risk of being at 5% and going negative, and what happens if Snohomish County doesn't allow districts to go negative anymore? That seems like a pretty big risk to me. If that's a genuine fear that's had, that means the district no longer exists. That's a much bigger risk than opening a contract to me. So this is just where I'm gathering information as I go, and I'm trying to see, right? My job here, unfortunately, right now is just identifying and mitigating risk as best as possible. And so that's where I sit through it, and I'm just trying to really wrap my head around, like, everything that we do has risk associated with it, which makes the most sense to go after. So.
All right, I'd like to, if there's no other questions, we got a half an hour left and we have Marshall's financial report, and I know that we want to talk about that as well. Do you have any burning questions? Carl? No?
Let's move forward.
Okay, let's move next item to D. Fiscal impact.
Okay, that's perfect. So just to reiterate, this is the same presentation, word for word, that we shared with first the cabinet, then the.
Can you minimize the video? So I can, it's blocking out just a little bit. No, it's all right. Don't call.
I also gave you guys handouts just if you want to take notes or anything. But okay, so a presentation we gave to the principals and to GFPA. The most impacted by this is district office and GFPA. So the problems that we've identified is that we've seen a dramatic increase in students with needs in the 2023 school year, and it's likely going to continue next year and beyond. Seen a 16% increase in sped count this year, $1.5 million increase in sped costs. And we still have a large number of students waiting on evaluations. And, we seem to be adding 10 to 15 new special ed identified students every month. We have high inflation, there's gonna be high inflation next year as well. Because of the way the funding model works, it creates a deficit of about $600,000 for us in salary increases because the state only provides the inflationary factor for staffing units that they fund, and they fund almost no classified positions, and they don't fund all of our teaching positions that we have. And the teaching positions we do fund, they only fund part of them at the state funding model level. And then we're gonna see a reduction, a likely reduction in federal ESSER grant funding next year. We have a Learn to Return grant that we're using to help pay for nursing. That's $200,000. No guarantee that's gonna come back next year. We have 2 Crossroad grants that are used to help fund the 9th grade academy and some other programs in Crossroads. No guarantee those are gonna come back next year. So as a result, we feel like we need to cut 1.5 million from the budget. And we've kind of been talking about that for a while.
Marshall, just real quick, those 2 with the ESSER are those programs. That's what we're using to fund staff that were hired for that, or additional time. Like what is that money attributed
Ninth
to?
Grade Academy is a partnership that Crossroads has with the federal government to see if this program would make a difference. So they got a grant for it for 1 year, and it's staffed at, I think there's a couple of teachers and some para support or case manager support in there. And it is to help really emotionally deficient, credit deficient, at-risk 9th graders kind of reintegrate with school. And I think, I mean, if I want to speak for Bridget, she's presenting, I think, next week.
Yes.
So she may comment on this, but I think it's been very successful. I think that I think we would like to continue it next year. I think we would like to work on some of our partnerships to make it more cost effective. And I don't really want to go too deep into those details, but
Yeah. And I don't necessarily, I don't want you to either. I guess the question I have, and let me preface this with saying, I'll say it twice. By no means am I saying we shouldn't continue it. By no means am I saying we shouldn't continue it, but I guess I just want to be clear. Do we hire staff and we're saying, hey, we have a contractual obligation to that staff member. So even though we're not, even if funding goes away, we're still on the hook? Or if for some reason, not that it should, if it went away, do we have, are you saying that there's some hook there where I've got to continue that outside of all the good that it does? Like we've got contractual obligation? Okay,
it would be a choice.
okay.
And I personally, this is just me speaking as someone who's been talking to Crossroads about the 9th grade academy. I think it's a positive thing for our district. I think it's doing a ton of good. I think it could be self-sufficient and pay for itself.
Got it. I guess because we're in the next slide, we're going to talk about the ways that we're going to get to the one, you know, the decisions that we're going to have to make to leverage our dollars for students. And the kind of the things that we're doing. Not saying it should be on there, but I didn't see it on there as one of the potential options or decisions. So what you're saying with this slide, I guess I'm just saying it to make sure I understand, is we want that, it's worth the money. So that's not one of the hard decisions that we're going to make in the following slides.
My opinion only. And
Okay.
we have teachers changing positions at Crossroads to help address some of the funding.
Right.
But we haven't had real discussions in county or with Bridget about should 9th grade academy go forward or should it not go forward. I personally would advocate that we
Right.
still have it, but that's just a personal way.
And the reason I'm saying that, and you guys heard me talk about this real quick, but you know, the NSBA, when I went there, we're talking about how we communicate our financial situation better to the people that we serve, right? We should talk about that, right? We're making sacrifices in other areas because we believe in that program and we believe that that's moving students forward, right? So that's what I'm trying to get out of this discussion is we are collectively saying we want and need that. So we will make sacrifices other way down the line because we want to continue to serve students in that way. That's where I'm going with this. Okay.
Gotcha. So we identified some areas where we could get some cost savings. So the district office, we decided we we need to reduce district. So part of what we have to do is we have to find ways to redirect some of our basic ed money into student supports, because that's the way, we're not alone in this. Every school district's having to do this. Kids coming out of the pandemic are behind, social emotionally, educationally. They just need a lot more supports. So we feel that we need to reduce some of our district-wide office stuff. Class sizes have gotten pretty small at the high school. CTE classes are competing with each other at the high school, so we need to reduce, shift some staffing at the high school to other areas that are needed, and offer some less CTE offerings there so that the CTE classes aren't kind of cannibalizing each other. The middle school, there's a small enrollment bubble coming through. The 5th grade class is about our smallest class in the district. So they're going to have that class come through for 3 years and reduce their enrollment by about 50 students. So right sizing the staffing there, utilizing open positions elsewhere and at the middle school to right size the staffing. Crossroads High School, the class sizes have gotten a little bit small, so we think there's some opportunity to right size at Crossroads. Monte Cristo, and Mountain Way, kind of the same thing. They have, just because of the way the scheduling works with the specials, the K3 class size is actually at a 16-to-1 ratio. We're funded at 17-to-1. 16-to-1 is among the lowest class size in our area. Most districts try and get right around 17-to-1. Some make a strategic cost adjustment to go a little above the 17 because it's less expensive to be a little above 17 and have one less teacher. We need to get closer to the 17-to-1. And also the bulk of the students that are needing more needs are coming from that PK to 5 group, and kind of the same thing with Mountain Way. Pause on each one for a second. So our plan for 23-24.
Can I ask a question about that one? How do you know the class sizes of the other districts? Is it published somewhere, or you just get a print?
It's published.
It's on the OSPI.
Yeah, there's a K3 class size.
Oh, just the
Compliance.
K3?
Yeah.
Okay, but not the other classes?
The other classes, we've looked at the bargaining agreements for other districts, and
Okay,
I know I have counterparts that I talked to.
right, okay.
And you know what the state funds us for at the secondary level, it's more like 28-to-1. So if we have classes that are 6 or 10, we're essentially borrowing from somewhere else to have that class work. So areas that our 23-24 plan, which we are ready to implement, is that we're going to reduce district-wide by 2 FTE. So our CTE director is retiring, so we're not going to rehire that. We're going to distribute that internally to other staff. We have a BCBA that's supporting district-wide. They're going to move to the classroom, and we're going to reduce extra time district-wide by $140,000. That's about 12% reduction. Easily identified areas that we can reduce this.
And what was BCBA again?
BCBA is a
Board certified behavior analyst.
Okay.
Sorry. So the high school, we targeted reducing by 2. So, and I want to preface this by, we are utilizing open positions to shift people around, and we do not want to do any RIFs. We're not going to do any RIFs. We're just shifting people around open positions. And if more open positions become available, the plan could change slightly if other retirements happen, or if people accept jobs elsewhere, or people get out of the education business. But at the high school, we have 1 retirement. We're not going to refill that position. And we're going to shift one teacher to a building sub for a year. And that saves about $50,000.
Tell me what it means, building sub.
So we
Like,
have, since it's so hard to get subs,
Mhm.
we decided that we would bring subs on and station them at a building. And their job would be to be the sub at that building. Their first job is to be the sub at that building every day. So if there's a teacher sick or on leave for whatever reason, they utilize that building sub before anything else. And we pay them the sub rate, but we give them kind of a contract for the sub rate of pay for the entire year. So for whatever reason, on the rare occasion where there's maybe not an absence in that building on that day, that sub is available to the other buildings. So we have these at every building. And it really helped solve some of the sub problems, because it really, what it did is it had people that would be subs and working at every district within 20 miles of here. It allowed them to commit themselves to here, knowing that they're guaranteed to have work every day. So actually, I think that, talking about things we've done differently, I think that's a big win for us this year. And we want to keep it going forward.
And so they get 50,000 less because we're not paying them benefits?
So by them being, so we pay a building sub $36,000, which makes it $50,000 with benefits. So if we shift an existing teacher that we're overstaffed into the building sub position, we don't have to pay for the building sub. So that's what we save.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. So Crossroads reduction was targeted to, we're going to shift one teacher, may or may not be a CTE teacher. The current plan was CTE, but I had a whisper in my ear that maybe there's possibility of a different thing working better. But a CTE teacher to the middle school, freeing up a middle school teacher to go get down to, because we have to work with endorsements. Most of our openings are in the elementary level right now. So we are working with teachers that have to have a K-8 endorsement to be shifted down.
Mhm.
So, and shift one Crossroads teacher to their building sub. The middle school reduction we've targeted to, we have a teacher going on a leave of absence next year, so we just wouldn't hire a leave replacement for that teacher. That'll save us $108,000. We have a teacher on leave this whole year that we're paying, and we're paying for a person to teach that teacher's class this year also. So regardless of the outcome of this leave, we won't be paying two people next year for that. So that's another $109,000. And then we can shift one teacher down to elementary because we moved the Crossroads teacher over. So that saves what that elementary teacher would have cost us. And it's just 2 pages of. So Monte Cristo, we want to get to that K-3 compliance ratio. So we identified that we're a little heavy in specialists. So we're going to be, this is the same at both schools. We're going to reduce by one specialist at each school. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to have a shared library and a shared health. So 1 week, the library special will be at Mountain Way for the whole week. And the health special will be at Monte Cristo. And then the next week it just flips.
So does that mean that the library is not open at one of the schools?
They have classified people in the library to be aides.
Oh,
So
okay.
they can have people come check out books and
Okay.
go in the library for that.
So we're not shut, there's no
No.
shutting down
No
library.
shutting down library.
Okay, just wanted to be real clear on that. Not shutting down
learning.
library. Okay.
We have kind of a success room where kids go as kind of, if they're in timeout or minor detention. We feel like we can have, we have 2 people staffed in each one at each school. We think with talking to the principal, we can work with 1 in each building instead of 2. And then kind of the ongoing conversation about special education. We're having our review to identify possible efficiency improvements. Balancing the IEP caseload throughout the district. We have bubbles of IEPs where you may have a teacher with 7 at one school and a teacher with 18 at another school. Trying to balance those through working with special ed to maybe move a kid up a year earlier, keep a kid down 1 extra year if they're going to be with us for 21 years till they're 21 anyways, things like that. Hiring an SLPA to support the SLP or hiring an additional SLP to reduce workload and overload. Adhere to the board policy around choice transfers. We are allowed to be a little more selective in who we allow to choice transfer in if they're a very high cost individual. They should be served by their home district, and that financial costs should be absorbed by their home district rather than allowing them to choice in, and we're so far over the cap. Focus on hiring Granite Falls staff as opposed to utilizing agencies. These are all things that there's no quantitative value, but if we are successful in these things, there would be additional savings.
Marshall, can you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
You said something first.
I was just gonna say, Dr. Middleton, I have the hard question here because while we focus so hard on cutting costs, getting to that 5% and everything where we can, the goal still, first and foremost goal, as you were alluding to and Director Carey were alluding to earlier on, first and foremost goal is educational outcomes. Do we feel like that we, with these moves, can not only sustain but improve educational outcomes?
I think we can continue. I don't think we'll be hurt educationally.
Okay.
And the work that we've done this year and continue to do, I think we'll continue to improve.
Okay.
I guess I would add that even with these changes, our class sizes will still be some of the smallest in Snohomish County.
Okay.
So can we, just to go on that, and then I have another question. Like I was saying, we need to discuss those trade-offs, right? The NSBA talked about, identifying, we could have done XX or YY. We chose YY because it does ZZ for the students. And, here's the trade-offs, and we're, like I was talking about earlier. So in our communication, I think we need to be clear about the trade-offs that we're doing. And then summary, we feel like we aren't rolling the ball back forward from an educational outcome. We feel that we can continue to push that. Just in our summer communication, but I guess I just wanted to go to one bullet on here, and you don't have to be, I'm completely okay with a gut check, but I guess I never processed, do we have, I guess, what percentage of our SPED population we've talked about is 22% are choice transfers? Is that a statistically significant amount of students? I mean, are we talking?
I think that's something we'd have to follow up back up with you and run some reports.
Okay.
I don't know, but we have kids that are trying to choice transfer in with very high needs that
we've denied. I mean, we
Yeah.
even just the other day. So
Yeah, that's why I guess I would be, and I'm fine with you following up. I guess I would be surprised if that was a statistically significant number, and maybe it is, but I guess if that would spur, if it was, I guess that would spur a whole lot of other questions. So
it's statistically significant.
more than 1%.
If we were not at the cap, we would receive $12,000 or $13,000 extra funding for that student coming in on top of their basic ed funding. So we would receive funding that could provide services. So if we do allow a choice transfer to come in that requires extra services, we're paying that out. We're paying those services out of our own pocket. We're not getting that $13,000. So it's.
Yeah, I guess that's exactly my point. That's where I'm going is like, why are we doing that? Like if that's, and so that's why I'm asking if you said, oh, that number of total choice transfers are unspent, that's less than 1%. I would say, oh, that's not statistically right. That's no big deal. But if you're like, oh, that's 4%, I'd be like,
If
what?
100 of our 420 SPED students are choice transfers.
Why are we?
That's-
Because that's literally taken, I mean, that makes no good sense. So I get back to me on that one.
Yeah.
Get back to me on that one.
Absolutely.
Can we take an action item can you just get back to us? I don't know which person does that, but
I think it'll be a
I
comment.
think it goes to
Okay.
Dr. M. Dr. M's really the only one that we can tell to
All right.
give us something.
well then, just let us know
Yep.
how many choice transfers we have.
It doesn't have to be, I mean, I'm fine with percentages, whatever's easier.
Right.
Right.
Just it's kind of a summary that we've identified sped decrease at 0.5 million. Loss of grants of $550,000, unfunded inflationary increase of $600,000, continued sped increases, an unknown impact. Total identified cost savings of those bullet points on the previous slides was 1.433. Other changes that we have is the Senate sped bill passed. So that's an estimate of $600,000 additional for Granite Falls. We're gonna have an enrollment increase of at least.
Have you seen the calculator for that yet?
I have not yet.
Yeah, so you're guessing
I'm
on
still
that.
using my calculator.
Okay,
I've seen a calculator that is an estimate that is within plus or minus. It's plus $80,000 for what I have. That OSPI's calculator, but it's still just an estimate also.
okay.
We expect the real calculators to be out in a couple of weeks.
I just want to be clear. So that's an estimate.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have an estimated increase in enrollment of 50 FTE. I think we had a really positive kindergarten roundup last night. So it could be greater than that, but 50 FTE is about $500,000 in extra apportionment. Then there's potential savings in special ed. So,
But that extra FTE could have the opposite effect. If that extra FTE requires late hires, expensive hires, right? Those extra students will actually not give us money, they'll take money away.
that 50 FTE actually is going to the right place right now.
Okay,
It's gonna, that the high school is gonna show the increase in FTE. Both elementary schools should be pretty flat
okay.
unless we get a huge kindergarten class or a bunch of move-ins. So, other things that we wanted to highlight with the groups we've talked to is that if this plan is not implemented well, or if special ed costs continue to require redirection of funds, we have to look at the next level of things to reduce and keeping our 5% fund balance policy in mind. We have health attendants and nurses now. Potential to have just nurses and not have health attendants. We have assistant principals, and if we need to find more general fund, basic education cuts, assistant principals would have to be on the table. Hope we would have, we're likely gonna have some additional attrition over the summer that we may be able to fill without hiring. And then campus monitors would have to be something on the table as well.
So I guess just to put a bow in it, so you're saying that based upon these trade-offs, the 23-24 budget will show a 5% fund balance, and you feel fairly confident that we'll get there.
This actually will show a balanced budget right now, not growing fund balance. To grow fund balance, we'd have to cut much deeper.
Okay, so that's why I wanted to be clear. So you're saying that the 23-24 budget will show a fund balance of 4% or something along those lines?
Whatever our fund balance is this year, which may be, 3%.
Okay. I was gonna immediately say something, but I don't want someone to throw a computer at me or something, but we do have a 5% fund balance policy. That's not 5%. Don't throw something at me.
I'm not gonna throw anything at you. We need to wait for all the tools to come out.
Okay,
so
so
that we
grab
can-
the Coke.
No, we need to wait for the tools to come out, and we'll have a better idea of the things I don't have on there is that we have some extra funding for social emotional FTE that is not showing on there because there's no estimate for how much that is yet.
Yeah.
There's the sped. The power of the Senate sped bill is likely higher than that. That's conservative. All of these are conservative estimates.
Yeah.
It could be more attrition. This is what we're able to identify without impacting programs, existing staff, without causing tremendous amounts of pain.
And I hear all of that. But I guess my hope was you show me what 5% looks like and how we get there to meet our policy was kind of the direction that I was kind of hoping for. And I apologize for maybe not picking that up because I thought as I was doing the math, I actually counted 4.81. I was like, oh, we're going to get there. But you're saying that that's just going to tread water.
Right. But you know, I think in 2 weeks, we'll have a much better vision of where the funding is. There is what looks like $700,000 in ESSER money that's showing up on the calculators. Nobody has said how it's coming to us. That's not in this either. There's supposed to be some vision of that in a couple of weeks. There's a lot of unknowns. We have to act on this now.
Right.
But there's a lot of unknowns, and the further cuts we have to make don't need to be decided right now.
So that means we get to do this again in like 4 weeks.
Well, I think what Marshall's saying is we need to make a decision on the budget before that, is what I think I hear you
I
saying.
mean, so if what we're saying is you want to see right now 5%, that would mean, okay, we probably need to do no assistant principals. Is that something we're willing to do to get to 5%? It would mean no campus monitors. Is that something we want to do to get to 5%?
Is it an and or an or? That
It's
statement,
5%,
that's
and.
that statement you just made.
It's an and.
How much is the 2% amount? Like how much additional dollars? Is
Probably $800,000, $1 million.
I want to be at 5% next year. That's Carl Carey speaking. That's what I was hoping that we were going to see is a plan that's going to get us to 5%. To align with our board policy that's 3 years old that we've never hit at this point.
I think we would be at 5% this year if we did not have the special ed needs that are just erupting at our elementary schools. And I feel like we are simply responding. Yeah, there are some other areas we can tighten up and so forth, but
I mean, and if the answer is, hey, Carl, in 2 weeks, I can give you a better gut check and tell because the calculator will be out and all of that, I can wait 2 weeks. That's no big deal as long as there's not some sort of.
Well, I mean, I think
Date
if we
that we're
wanted
gonna miss.
to, if we wanted to not have assistant principals, we have to have a great resolution for that, I believe.
Well, I guess here's my point. I'm not saying that I'm going to say, yes, let's do that, but I wanted to see what is it going to take to get us to 5%? And maybe it's what you said, maybe it's something else. Maybe there's some creative things that we could do. I guess I just wanted to understand with all of the people here on the opposite side of the table that are way smarter about this than I am, right? We do the what, you guys do the how, okay? I want to get to 5%. You know, how would we do that? And maybe at the end of that, I pull up and go, oh, no, okay, you know, but this is just kicking the can down the road. And if we experience what every other district, well, not every other district, I hate absolutes, what a significant amount of districts in our area are experiencing where suddenly the enrollment goes down, we are sunk. We got no money in the bank. We got no one's coming to rescue us. We are in dire straits. And all we can do at that point is cut till we get to a point where we at least start treading water. My goal here is to give us the ability to float through hard bumps in the road. And 3% fund balance isn't going to do that. Quite honestly, a 5% fund balance isn't going to do it, but we've got to start somewhere.
I guess I would respond with, if we can tread water and stay even while we're trying to manage this recovery from the pandemic, while other districts are seeing massive declines, massive rifts, I think that's a win. And I think it's a win for our community, it's a win for our school districts, it's a win for our children.
Absolutely. It's a win. It's a win now, but I don't know what 24-25 is going to look like from enrollment, right? I can only control this. I don't know what's going to happen down the road. And so I'm not moving. We're talking about moving the ball forward. I'm not moving the balls forward. And like I said, maybe at the end of this, I pull up short and say I can't do it, but I'm just one person talking, right? This board doesn't move based upon what Carl says. I'm just giving you my 2 cents.
I'm throwing this out there not to beat a dead horse from the earlier conversation, but this sure sounds like the Like our risk right now is drop all assistant principals and a ton of other people, or to get to 5%, or we reopening the bargaining agreement. That's
There's
either or.
there's so many risks opening.
There's so many risks right here. We're either not at 5%.
I think that that's a
Or, like-
conversation we can take offline, but I think there's more risk in that than like is super apparent right at the top, and we really need to think about that. Like a memorandum of understanding is a very different thing than opening that contract back up. It's a big deal. So I think that we want to look at that and really the risk associated with that, because I mean, Marshall pointed out work stoppage. There's so much more. There's never been a time that contract has opened that it has not cost us so much money, one way or the other, right? I mean, it costs a lot when it opens,
100%. I just know that, right, like we said,
and we don't have anything. So I'm like,
yeah, I
Anyway.
mean, 100% just from the front, like our top goal is educational outcomes. And this is already why I asked Dr. Middleton, right? Do we see that we can maintain and or exceed educational outcomes with what we're doing here? And all I'm hearing as a resolution now is get rid of more people to get to a 5% number that will decrease, clearly in my eyes, decrease educational outcomes. So that's where I am. I know that I'm completely 100% agreeing the research has to be done there, but we have to commit to doing the research, and we just need to figure out what process that needs to go through to understand the risks so that those are in front of us to make the decision.
Yeah, I don't know where we go to from here, but, and I'm certainly not. I'm certainly not trying to create a situation where we aren't able to serve and increase educational outcomes and leverage our dollars and do all of those things. However, one of the goals when I raised my right hand was to maintain the fiscal solvency of this organization, and we aren't doing that right now. And I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of kicking the can down the road. I can't do it. Can't do it. Sorry.
some of my observations today are, we talk about continued special education increases with an unknown impact, like, and massive influx possibly coming in for next year, and no kind of slowdown or whatever, but we've created a process. You guys know better than we do, but what can we do to either, I mean, I don't know if you can slow it down, but can you strategically do anything that can make it less unknown?
Right. And I mean, that's why we're having someone from the outside come in and take a look. And if there's just something so obvious, low hanging fruit of a process or procedure that we're missing, we welcome that.
So do you think that we would have a report from them? What, 4 weeks, 6 weeks?
They'll have some initial recommendations next week, and then they'll do something a little bit more formal
Okay. So
within weeks.
So, and Marshall, you're thinking that the calculators, and you'll have better information in a
Yeah.
couple of weeks from now is what I think.
so. I mean, they gave a timeline,
Mhm.
and it was mid-May when a lot of these tools will be available. I mean, WASA and WASDA and WASBO, they're all trying to digest the budget to see what the CARES money means, what the extra money really means. And I don't know that. I mean, I built my own calculator for special ed, and it came up with $680,000. But if we have more enrollment, that number goes up more, because it means that we can count more special ed kids towards that funding.
Mhm.
So if we get 50 more kids, we can count 7 more special ed kids.
And other than cutting positions that we currently have, if I understand, the only other cost savings, I mean, attrition is one of the things we talked about. And other than, where it says the other considerations, and that was going into actual, losing positions. Other than that, the only place to sort of save money is to try to convert contracted positions to FTE hires. Is there any
Yeah.
other place to,
Other than this
Save.
list here that we have the list of.
right, without,
considerations.
we said not a RIF at this point, without doing a RIF. From this presentation, what I see is we have people retiring, we have some attrition, we're gonna move some people around, so that's gonna save some money. But the only other place that I think I've seen in here is the conversion of contracts to FTE. Is that true? Is there anywhere else that I've missed?
I think that's probably true. I mean,
Okay,
the positions that you can consider kind of discretionary
mhm,
are assistant principals,
mhm.
I guess secretaries. I mean, you can have one secretary in a building. You could have one custodian in a building instead of two.
Mhm.
You could have, the campus monitors.
But all of those would require a RIF, is what you're saying, like that kind of cut would require a RIF.
Yeah,
And so without doing a RIF, is there any other place that you see a cost savings that sort of, you mentioned a bullet point and maybe we yada it and I didn't hone in on
There
it.
is, we could say no building budgets for principals, that's $300,000. We could say, you just have to make it
How much do they get for a building budget right now? And what,
$35,000 to $40,000.
and what do they buy with it?
Funds, stuff for classrooms. They made field trips, paper.
They buy paper out of the principal's
Well,
fund?
we have, I don't know that they buy paper out of that. but-
Yeah, everything for a
We
building.
don't have a paper contract somewhere?
We do, most of the copying is done at the copy center.
Okay, but so the principals don't pay for, okay, anyway, so there's a secondary place. Anyway, I'm just trying to say, so, because I have to ask you. So could we get kind of a look at how much we have for the contracts we have that are for employment? Can we get a look at like what types of positions those are and how much those are costing us? And then what it would look like if that was converted to an FTE position, how much it would cost? And we can look at the difference there
Yeah.
to see how much of a savings, like, I don't know, because we see the personnel report. So we see like a person got hired, but I don't know that that means we now have 60 people on the payroll doing that job, or like, that's the only one person that's doing the job.
Right.
So maybe if we look at that, it kind of feels like we need to have this conversation again in a few weeks. And I don't like the idea of continually having to come back. But how can we not have this conversation again? How can we not keep an eye on it so closely when we are, what are we at, 1.6 million over? And with no slowdown in being able, we can't project anything. So from SPED, if you have any ideas about any strategies that we could somehow gain some visibility into what's coming, right? So we can prepare for impact. And then, I don't know. And then we come back and we do this in a couple weeks. Board, what do you think?
Yeah, if I heard you correctly, so it's kind of just expanding upon my, like, at least, I'm sure we all think this too, but the anecdotal thought that if nursing alone is such a big issue, like, let's see if we hypothetically had everybody staffed instead of these contracts, like how much are we overpaying there?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think,
Then we could give Jennifer information on who to truly focus in on recruiting, right? Or we can get some better information about how we're, so if we've got a contract for this much money and a contract for I don't know, maybe we have a contract for a position at $1 amount and a contract for the same position at a different dollar amount, or I don't really know how that works, but just take a look at it, because then we can give you some information on who to truly recruit, because that would be the biggest bang for the buck, right? If you're like, a couple of people doing all the recruiting, at least give you some information that would, I don't know, that's just a thought, trying to do more with much
Yeah.
less.
Okay.
Carl, what do you think? I know you're dying over there.
Yeah, I mean,
You have a tell, by the way.
it's, I have lots of tells. I have lots of tells. This is a very tough discussion. It's something that I don't take lightly. And I guess I just want to make clear that this isn't just me. I mean, this was an exit finding in our audit, that we only had enough money in the bank to essentially pay for, I think, 3 days. Right? Like, this isn't just Carl. This is the state of Washington saying that we are not a financially solvent institution, right? And I am not comfortable with just going, well, I'm just going to hope, right? And this is probably where maybe I swing more, like I said, of the things I can control, right? Like, I mean, something has to be done. And I know it's not easy. I know it's not fun. I know I know that the weight of that may even cause me to go, let's not do that, but I want to see it.
Yeah.
I want to know what that is going to understand. I want to talk through it. I want the people that are way smarter than me to figure out what that looks like. And then for us to make some hard decisions. I mean, the districts that are declining in enrollment but aren't laying people off, like, well, I guess I should name districts, like several large districts around us. That is because they have fund balances ranging from 18 to 23%, right? 23%. They can go 2 or 3 years without any additional money, keeping everyone whole and be probably just fine and end up probably around 5%. We can't do that. All we could do is cut the minute that the tide changes. And that's just not a solvent place to be. So that's all I've got to say. I don't want to
So
sound like broken record.
I feel like would it 4 weeks from now? Is that graduation? Or
It
wait,
is.
Roughly around there, yeah.
oh my goodness. Okay, we'll make it 5. Or should we make it 3? 3 or 5, you guys?
Well,
We don't want to go graduation week.
Right. can we say next Wednesday at our board meeting, there is a slot for Marshall's report. If he could just give an update, has the calculator come out? Is there anything new to report? And then certainly we can send you information. The answers to these questions don't have to wait weeks and weeks. We can get that to you within days.
Dr. Moore, how soon do we need to make a decision and support or to move forward with the budget for 2023-24?
If some of these items, other considerations that involve staff, which involves reduction in force, we would have to do something very soon. If that's
We have to have a resolution at the next board meeting.
right. But we've tried hard, and during the pandemic, we kept everyone whole. We've been, even as we're losing through attrition, we're trying to keep everyone whole. But if we need to go a different direction, then next Wednesday, we'd have to do a resolution.
I think personally, it looks like the staff has done a really good job of trying to work under the amount of taxes that we get and make the adjustments to try to get this without costing us employees. So, but we also need to know hard stop when we need the decision. And if next Wednesday we have to make that decision, then I think we're going to have to continue somehow before that.
So can I just say one thing? I mean, we can work. So I finally found it. This is our 1920 audit, right? The state auditor says district's financial condition places at risk of not being able to meet financial obligations or provide services at current levels. And this is how we responded. The Grand Falls School District has adopted a board policy requiring a 5% minimum fund balance by the end of 21-22 school year. During the 19-20 school year, the district's rich fund balance 317%. The 19-20 year-end fund balance was $674,000, which equates to 2.1. We're on track for continued growth in 2021 with minimal target of $1 million. We're accomplishing this through strong partnerships with our association conservatively forecasting and enrolling staffing. We expect to achieve 5% by the end of 21-22. Now, granted, lots of things happened after that, the world, all of those things, but I'm not sure how we would respond when that comes up on our future audit. So that's all I got.
I hear you, and I was here for that, and yeah. And we keep working toward that. All right, so I have a few action items, but I wanted to know so we're saying we're gonna wait for Marshall's update. So there's a few things that I wrote down. For special education, I asked for any sort of strategic ideas you have, and I mean anything that could help us to have any sort of transparency into what's coming in for next year. Because if that is our unknown for 5%, and we somehow think we're gonna have 87 more evaluations come rolling in the fall, right? And then even the strategy of timing. Like, would it be more beneficial to us to really have those done before September, whatever, or beginning of October? I mean, strategically, is it better to spend the money all at once and then do the services? Or I don't know, but maybe there's a way to strategically work through that, or to gain some sort of visibility now between now and the beginning of next school year, so that we know sort of what's coming. I don't know. So that, and then the count or the cost, the cost for the choice transfers for special education. For budget, obviously, the forecast for 5%. And kind of the idea of what we have for contracted positions and the cost versus if we hired FTE, what would that look like? And then HR is more just the vision and the brainstorming of, okay, we know what we've done now, and especially giving you something to look toward, like what else or what different, or how can we pivot? And I don't know if anyone here has any ideas, but those were the things I wrote down, and maybe we just keep in contact until next week and see what that comes up with and see. But we definitely can't coast even for, any amount of time. It's so close. And 2.1, I remember 2.1, it wasn't good. And so, yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts?
There's no way for us, honestly, the sped part from this is the big unknown, right? You throw, if Marshall's saying 800,000 will get us to 5, we overspent by 1.5 million right there. We're at 5.3, 5.4 without that cost. And that's what's seemingly not anything to do with, or like, yes, some processes could be better, but we've increased, we're now at a 22% school. Now, it's one thing if we're accepting a ton of choice transfers, then okay, that's definitely something that we can change. But if that's not it, then I mean, we're stealing from Peter to give to Paul, or Paul to Peter, or whatever that it is, right? We're in order to effectively support our SPED population, we are considering stripping down the rest of the district. And so that's where it's really difficult for me, is like, it feels like there's this runaway train that we don't have a good grasp on. And unfortunately, it's nothing to speak negatively towards SPED or anything. It's just like, that just seems like it's where there's smoke. And we're trying to really figure out, like, how the heck do we wrap our arms around that? Because even if then we did some drastic measures to get down, what's to say that next year we don't overspend and spend by another $1.5 million and we're not hitting 5% again? Where do we make the cuts then? Right? It's just trying to future proof. So these are all things that, like, I'm thinking through and trying to go through, and I'm sure we'll have conversations, but that's like my fear, so to speak. So,
And of the 87, it looks like 56 are pre-kindergarten or kindergarten, which makes me hope that we've identified whoever we're going to add. I know that we added dyslexia this year as a qualifying thing, but I don't know if P2, 3, I don't know how many of those are dyslexia at that point. I don't, but anyway, yeah, exactly. So, but maybe doing the evaluation of 56 of the 87 in the younger grades would, I don't know if that's the transparency. I don't know how many more kids we would have to look at next year, but whatever that looks like, you know how many are set up, you know what the enrollment is in there, and we can kind of somehow possibly extrapolate what that looks like for next year. Like, what would be the worst case scenario in there? I don't know. Because somehow that has to feed into the 5%, right? But we have some numbers. We know how many we've evaluated already, and whoever we declined will likely come back. And I don't know. All right.
I guess I'll just add that if there was no cap on special ed funding, that 13.5, which is now moving to 15, didn't exist, we get $1.8 million more from the state. But I don't know why some school district, maybe it's us, maybe it's somebody else, doesn't sue the state, like the McCleary thing, and say, you know what, your constitution says you have to fully fund this, and you're not. That's the frustrating thing to me.
Mhm.
I've heard rumors that there's a school district about to do that.
Oh. All right, so we will, I don't know what time it is.
It's 8 o'clock.
Well, I have one more question. Does the model actually works to fund special education? They just cap the model. If the model just had no cap, it would be fully funded for special education.
So I was at a presentation and they said it best. At this point, it's a civil rights issue that we aren't, and so the state absolutely should be sued for this.
But we don't have enough money, as we can see, to be that person, so. All right. All right, well, thank you. The time is 7:56. We are adjourned. That's all I get.